Agreed.
She's looking like an absolute model.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's 3 p.m. and we are all set to begin with another stimulating session on connecting dots. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Data allows organization to visualize relationships between what is happening in different locations, departments, and systems. Looking at these data points side by side allows us to develop more accurate theories and put into place more effective solutions. This information can then be used to optimize processes to increase the overall efficiency of a business or system. Data is important because it helps businesses optimize their performances. Intuitive statistics and folk statistics refers to the cognitive phenomenon where organizations use data to make generalizations and predictions about the world. Join us for this fascinating session and watch our experts share their valuable inputs on how data is important and correct usage of information can really help organizations be more effective and impactful. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots. Data is the king, intuitive, analytic, objective. To know more about HRAI and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link and details posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We will be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all participants to kindly give your feedback on the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our esteemed panel members for our today's webinar. Ms. Gauri Das, Vice President and Head HR, India Factoring and Finance Solutions Private Limited. Gauri Das is an engineer turned HR professional with double masters in human resources and psychology. Gauri is a strategic HR leader with 15 plus years of experience in crafting and aligning HR strategy with business goals. She supports businesses in setting the right culture, driving performance, reinventing employee experience, and improving capabilities. She carries a wealth of experience with both startups and well established organizations. She loves high energy and growth focused environment. You can also follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Our next panel member, Ms. Debjani Roy, Chief Human Resource Officer, Mind Your Fleet, Chromosomes Software Private Limited. An HR domain expert with 25 plus years of industry experience across segments like manufacturing, telecom, IT, ITES, travel, hospitality, healthcare, etc. A pass out from FMS Delhi and a passionate HR practitioner by choice, have been felicitated for transformational as well as curated HR work in organizations of repute by national and international agencies throughout the career span. Currently, the CHRO of a startup in the IT space also offer independent HR consulting to organization on project basis. Also is an adjunct faculty to many B schools, a prolific speaker across events and an author too. You can also follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Our next panel member, Ms. Harini Srinivasan, partner, Semicostal Institute, India. Harini is a business transformation evangelist, a design thinker, a neuroscience enthusiast, and behavioral scientist, adept in unlocking human potential in organizations. She has 24 years of successful experiments in the area of leveraging people's potential for business agility and excellence, a strong believer in driving one's destiny. She practices resilience as a life skill. Positivity and ability is to drive engagement with people, helps her be an influencer both to industry and academia. She has shared her stories through her keynotes and TEDx talks. You can also follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Now I'll introduce our panel cum moderator for today's session, Ms. Kavita Kumar, channel partner, Server Happiness. With over 20 years of experience in corporate HR, Kavita has led projects in organizations from startups to large MNCs. With extensive experience in total rewards, digital workforce connectivity, organization development, M&A, fulfillment, and continuous learning programs. Kavita is currently helping organizations build deep rooted connections with the workforce and customers by enabling them to reimagine people's experience and happiness levels and help them transition to world-class place to work. Her experience spans across industries from IT, ITES, KPO, HR consulting, insurance, and BFSI. She is an alumnus of NMIMS Mumbai and is based out of Bangalore. You can also follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. And with this, we are done with the introductions. I will now hand over the platform to Ms. Kavita Kumar to take the discussion forward.
Thank you so much, Faisal, and a very good afternoon to all the analysts. I would like to start.
Kavita, your voice is very slow.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Yeah.
Okay, I'll start by first of all thanking HRAI for giving me this opportunity, and having been part of digital transformation of HR in multiple organizations, and its importance in HR as a topic is very close to my heart. And it is an honor to be talking about it to the stalwarts in HR who are present with us as speakers today. So, a very good afternoon to all the speakers and all the audience who have joined us to listen in. I would like to first start by talking about something that happened very recently, and it's about, and I'm sure all of us would have heard this news about a CEO of an organization firing 900 people via a Zoom call. And I'm sure many of us are outraged and baffled as well. We understand from this interview that based on some performance data, the CEO had to take this extreme step. So the decisions that he took was based on information that was provided to him or information that he had. So I would like to start this session by talking about how this kind of decision support and how HR enables decision support to business heads and organizational heads. Harini, if you would like to throw some light on this and how HR has a very vital role to play in this.
This was this was an interesting situation that made all of us think. Of course, most of us were enraged because it sounded, even when you watch the video, it sounded absolutely atrocious. At the same time, I'm sure there were a few people who looked at it from a different angle. But the perspective that I put on a situation like this, and what I have been experiencing when I played the role of a CHRO as well, is that there's a lot of data with us, okay? And data gets converted to information when we use analytics, right? And we make use of that information to take certain decisions. So a lot of data-driven decisions, they come out of when data gets converted to information. Once data is converted to information, it sits with us as knowledge. And the problem is when we start driving decisions based on the information and the knowledge, there is another small step which sometimes we don't take when we do decision making, especially in the people processes. And that's wisdom. So when you're applying this information and knowledge as wisdom is where you start looking at it from a non-judgmental perspective. So when you're looking at knowledge from a non-judgmental perspective, you also might be able to see other dimensions of the problem. And you're able to look at other dimensions of the problem, your decision could be different. So if our CEO who is in the Aapki Adalat Katghara right now, if he had the ability, or if someone had advised him to look at that information and the knowledge which he has gathered with that information, if someone had advised him to look at it with wisdom, if analytics was strong enough to give him that wisdom, then I think he might have taken slightly different decisions. He might have even introspected on taking a step back and trying to analyze why is it that the problem happened in the first place. Was there something wrong that he was looking at when it came to workforce planning? So when you're looking at information and knowledge from a perspective of wisdom, it lets you take a step back and introspect. And I think when you do an introspection, the decisions that come out are a lot more robust and meaningful and fair and transparent, rather than just applying the knowledge and taking a knee-jerk reaction. And I would want everyone to give it a thought about how do you use information through your analytics, wearing a lens of wisdom on top of that.
Thank you so much for your, very, let's just say, very honest opinion that you had. I mean, I'm not straight away jumping and talking about the CEO not doing the right thing. I suppose we have to look at things from a holistic perspective, look at all the angles, and make sure that, we are taking the right decisions, which is not only good for the organization, but also for the people who are in the organization. So, I mean, thank you, Harini. Taking this topic a little further, like you said, wisdom, yes, it's very important. So, we are, as HR people, we are expected to be intuitive in our decisions to be able to impact all the employees of the company. So, Gauri, I would like to ask you, when is it that we can rely on intuition instead of analysis in decision making?
Thanks, Kavita, for bringing this up because it's very interesting. We tell people you should improve on your intuition, and here we are talking about data. So we are confused whether we should go data way or we should go intuition way. So this becomes very important. I think there is no clear-cut rule whether we should use intuition or we should use data. At times we'll have a lot of data and then our intuition will tell us the final thing. So you are trying 10 dresses and you like 3, then you are lowering it down to 3, and then finally something in the gut will tell you isme zyada achhe lag raha, and you will go with that. So this is in the real life, but I think the way we take decisions is through heuristic, as psychology tells us, and the easiest way to take decisions is through heuristic, and that's how we rely on it. But from where is it coming? From where that intuition is coming to us, and that's where we say you need to learn to be more intuitive, because even this is an expertise and it comes from learning. So when research says it takes 10 years to get an expertise to have some intuition. So it's not that it comes from somewhere and it tells us how you have to take a decision. And then implicit learning. Many times we would have met people as HR professionals. There will be someone in the team who would have absolute good understanding about people, and looking at the candidate within 10 minutes they would say ye wala kaam nahi karne wala hai, this he would not join or she would not join, and it would turn out that they never join. So something implicitly is happening. We don't know what's it, but it does happen. So number one, expertise. If we have expertise on a particular matter, we can rely on intuition, because intuition itself is developed from that learning. Second is the amount of time that we have in hand. If we have a lot of time and there is ample data available, I think we can go ahead with the data, analyze and get decisions. But if it is shortage of time, then we have to rely on our intuition, our gut, whatever understanding we have. And likewise, say for example, there is someone who is a banker. Now, as a banker, they are dealing with proposals day in, day out, but are they able to translate this information into becoming a financial investment? No, that is not the case. So the relevant information, also the availability of relevant information, would be third thing, which I would say we should look at when we are deciding whether we should go intuition way or data way. But personally, I believe that there is nothing, it's not two sides of the spectrum. It's somewhere in between that we work on. Back to
Thank you, Gauri. In fact, I really like the fact what you talked about implicit learning. So I'm sure all of us during our MBA class used to, do multiple projects and activities given by our professor. And then, you are supposed to take these decisions in a very turbulent kind of a scenario. And then, you come out with observations. And then the expectation is that this implicit learning that you have about people, your judgments and everything is made based on that. So, that I think we carry it forward to our organizations as well. I remember, I'll give you an, example of what, in fact, it reminds me of an interaction with one of the business heads I had during a performance appraisal session. And we used to call these business discussions, and we used to sit with them and talk about who are part of the succession plan, top 5, who are doing very well, who are in need of development, etc. So one of the business heads used to be always right in the way he made decisions about his people, but it used to always start by saying "maza nahi aaya." Isko chhod do side mein, maza nahi aaya. That intuition was talking. However, he, maybe for lack of framework of better, data, etc., in front of us, he just said "maza nahi aaya." So Yeah, I mean, what if he was wrong? And what if that intuition was not correct? So I really like that fact that implicit learning is very, very important skill, not only for HR, but all business heads and all business people who are dealing with employees. So thanks, Gauri, for pointing that out. So, Devjani, I'd like to extend this to a question a little bit more to you, that how can we combine this, both of it? Instead of just saying maza nahi aaya, how can we combine this analytical decision making with data and make sure that intuition is also playing a role and we are able to make the right kind of decision?
Thank you, Kavita. First and foremost, I think it's a pleasure being on the stage of HREI one more time. Like always, they have this knack of picking up very contemporary and very, very topical, things to discuss. This is one more such occasion. And also thank you for getting my two good friends on board along with me, Harini and Gauri. Otherwise, I don't get to see them that often. Thank you. Apart from what Gauri just said, which made immense sense about implicit learning, as well as how to combine it somewhere in the middle and not really on the polar ends, I'd just like to bring to the table what really is intuition. How does intuition grow? Is it an overnight phenomena, or is it something where there is a science behind the art? Because while we may think that a sixth sense or developing a sixth sense to be able to be intuitive and to be able to to be able to say some things or behave in a manner which is a little forward than what just a very typical myopic linear kind of a personality would do, I would also think that there is a method behind that madness. Intuition is not a magic wand. It doesn't sit on somebody's shoulder out of some magical, phenomena. It doesn't happen like that. Intuition comes about as a culmination point of many, many years of experience, of knowledge gained over time, as well as your particular personal stories and anecdotes which you actually traverse through in your journey of life. When all of that covers your lifespan, that's where you find cues, and those cues start building up, blending nuances in your personality, which develops into a site which has a personality of its own. That's what to me stands for intuition. So even if I am a holistic person, and if I have just about five senses like everybody else, there is a ticking mind, which whether it sits on the left side or the right side, I'm not so sure. But wherever it does sit, it gives you certain impulses. It sends you certain signals, which makes you help or see certain situations in a very different light than what probably everybody else is looking at it. So for me, intuition is not something which you pick and choose as you go along. It's a very intrinsic part of your overall decision making, of your overall personality to sense what is around you. And if you have the ability to combine that intuitiveness along with data and ability to churn data and make some logical sequencing out of it, I think you have the best of both worlds. Therefore, as an individual, I would like to say that while there is immense space for cognitive thinking and obviously giving rise to situations and analysis and all the kind of deductions that we do out of that cognitive thinking, there is also a very definitive space for being creative, for being innovative. And if you ask me, intuitiveness is a very big part of that creativity that you bring to the table. Because only when you know how to think outside the box, or when you know how to look at things with an insight which is a little different, जिसे हिंदी में कहते हैं हटके, तभी ना मजा आने लगेगा. Because if you're just a follower of one set of thinking, then it will become boring. It might just lead you to a very, very structured and very myopic kind of a perspective. And उसमें जरूरी नहीं है कि मजा आने लगे. So I would say that as you go along in life and as you more gain on the ladder of hierarchies, or you age with time, not necessarily have a salt and pepper hair, but at least age with respect to experience, there is enough reason why you should be able to draw upon both reservoirs or both resource pools to be able to give cognitive output to be able to give rational thinking, to be able to give creativity a very different meaning altogether. And I, as a person, believe that a combination of two, not exactly in the 50-50 ratio, because different situations would merit different responses. It could be 60-40, it could be 70-30. Either way, you should be able to draw from both reservoirs. That's how I would approach the subject. Thank you, Kavita.
In fact, I've always wondered, like we keep hearing about, AI in the space of.
Kavita, your voice has gone slow again.
You hear me now?
Not good enough, Kavita. Can't hear you.
Audio is just kind of now. Can you hear me now?
No.
Oh,
No.
Can you hear me again?
Yes.
This is good.
Okay, so I'm just taking this off. Okay. So, yeah, sorry for the interruption. But
Kavita, some data is playing there.
so now you can hear me?
Crystal clear.
Yeah. So, this is what I've always wondered, when Devjani was talking about there has to be a logical sequencing and we need to be able to bring the best of both worlds. I keep thinking, we talk about bringing AI into the space of, data management into our HRMS workforce information that we provide to our business heads. So there are a lot of technical terms that come our way. And, I'm not sure how far we've been able to leverage how many companies or how many HR teams have been able to leverage that kind of innovation and creativity happening in data. So they talk about design thinking and artificial intelligence in data, and then we also hear something about exploratory data analysis. So Harini, can you throw some light into these technicalities of data?
Very simply put, exploratory data analysis is nothing but representing data or your information in as with as much visual impact as possible. So in exploratory data analysis, you will find a lot of graphs, you'll find all kinds of charts and all of that. But what actually happens as an outcome of that is there are certain aspects which you may not have anticipated to find or observe trends about. And when you're looking at it in a pictorial form, it opens up completely new insights. And that's where it's extremely useful. And at one point, I have an example to share where it was very, very useful for me when we used exploratory data analysis as a method. Like in one organization, we noticed regular absenteeism or late coming on Mondays. And it was a trend. Now, our hypothesis was people are unhappy about coming to work on Monday, and that's why there is absenteeism and late coming. So that was a hypothesis. So what we anticipated to see is that people who are not so great performers and all those who don't really feel engaged at work, we thought that that's what the data is going to throw us. And we are going to use that information and that knowledge for us to do some corrective actions. But when we used EDA, when we actually put it in a pictorial manner, we used a lot of information other than just the performance criteria. And we just wanted to look at it from different perspectives. And we got an amazing insight. Many employees in that particular office, that organization, they were from neighboring cities. And they used to go home on the weekends and come back to work directly on Monday mornings. And it was EDA which showed us the real reason for that late coming. So our entire hypothesis of relating absenteeism or late coming on Mondays to disengagement, it was completely turned around with EDA. It showed us a different perspective. In fact, it was quite contrary to our hypothesis. People were so engaged that they came directly to work from their mode of commute that they were using to come back to the city. And our decision here was different. Now, if we had used just the data in terms of how many people absent and what is the kind of time they come in, if we had just looked at that information of late coming and absenteeism, our decision probably would have been to talk to them, to counsel them about the importance of coming early, on time, being there on Monday mornings on time, helping them manage time and all of that. But when we noticed this, our decision making turned completely 360 degrees. And we said, okay, now let's go and find out how is it that we can help them. because their engagement level was so high that they were willing to come to work on Monday in spite of just reaching the city. So we staggered our Monday work hours. For all those who were traveling from another city on Monday mornings, we staggered their work hours on Monday. We brought in more flexibility, and we came up with a people-centric decision. And one of my team members who actually had that challenge, he volunteered to use that staggered timing so that he can be a fantastic backup for the night shift as well. So we got a good overlap of people over across shifts, especially on Monday. So that's where EDA was useful. It gave us completely different insights just by looking at the pictorial information. And has been, I think that's one of my most brilliant examples of not really having to use wisdom in that decision making, but simply using the information and knowledge that analytics gives because it has visual impact. And of course, nothing beats visual impact combined with amazing storytelling. So that's how we were able to make a business case for that decision as well.
That's brilliant, Harini. In fact, precisely, I mean, what we do with data is more important than the data itself, right? I mean, you have data in front of you, but what do we do with it? Like, for instance, when you tell me this story, it reminds me of a particular example, which I would love to share. So I work for this organization called Sarva Happiness, and we as an organization are sitting on loads and loads of data of employee behavior. What we do is we help organizations measure sense of belonging, organization cohesiveness, those kind of things. We also measure employee emotions, positive emotions, not so positive emotions. So in one of the companies that we studied, we did a 4-dimensional analysis of, employee emotions. And we found that, and this data was like very striking. We found that, wherever there was high level of fear, in what groups of people there was high level of fear, there was also very high level of inspiration. So it kind of baffled us initially to see that how is it that fear is driving inspiration in this organization, and then we tried to, so like I said, we did a 4-dimensional analysis. We tried to analyze not only the demonstrated surface behavior of employees, but also what are their, subconscious and unconscious principles or value systems that they carry in their head. So when we studied that mindset further, we realized that it was simply a matter of communication. We realized that the kind of leadership communication that was going on in the organization was that if you do not perform, there will be consequences. And that fear of those consequences was actually driving people to feel inspired to do work. Short-term bouts of inspiration was being shown so that they could perform. But actually it was a fear that was driving it. It was not an intrinsic passion to work or, some other kind of motivation, positive motivation. So we realized it's not a sustainable kind of scenario currently going on in that team. And of course, we did give some feedback in terms of how they could change and what are the kind of interventions they could do. So very interesting, like, I suppose that turned out to be an EDA, exploratory, data analysis, based on which we could see that these patterns emerging. So very nice. Thank you so much, Harini. So, Gauri, I would like to ask you that what are the advantages? Because I remember talking to, one of these data analytics companies who came and was trying to pitch in terms of what analysis they could do. And I'd asked them, can you do attrition analysis? Can you find out why my people are leaving? They said, why don't we find out why people are staying? Let's do that. And that was very interesting the way they said it. So it's a different perspective. How do you think we benefit from these kind of things?
Yeah, so beautiful stories, both Harini and Kavita. And I think the first thing which we can do with data is what Harini said. We can clear off those negative or incorrect perceptions, because data will bring reality and data will bring facts. So that is one thing which we can do. Second, I think we become very confident when we rely on data and take a decision, because we know there is something logical. As rational and logical beings, we look for a base for everything, anything that is happening. And that's where kids, when they start asking questions whose answers are not known, we become uncomfortable, because there's no rational thing to support that. So that is another thing. I think data makes us proactive also. Again, referring back to Harini's story, now that they knew that the challenge was something else, they proactively took some decisions and they brought in something which is comfortable for employees. So data helps many a times, and I would also like to share a story. So this story is of Vishal. Vishal is a very high performing employee, and he just won this Employee of the Quarter award. He works for client relationship, and all his clients are extremely happy with him. So he wins this and then he celebrates. And 7 days or 10 days from there, he's suddenly away from his desk at around 12 o'clock, 12:30. Somebody says 12, somebody says 12:30. Data nahi hai. So it's all perception. People think he's out for 60 minutes. Somebody thinks he's out for 2 hours. He doesn't do anything because he has won this award. So this is how things are happening. And we check with his manager what's happening. Why is Vishal not to be seen? And people are talking about him. And he says, no, he just goes for 5 minutes. So everybody has a different perception about it. Then we look at the data and we realize he is away from his desk 12:30 to 1 o'clock every single day. And this is very intriguing. Why is he out every day? And the response, I'm not judging, but it was very unique and it brought smiles to our faces. So Vishal shared with us that he recently got engaged, and her fiancé brings dabba lunch box for him. So he has to go out and collect it at 12:30 every day. But he's compensating for it in the evening, but nobody is looking at that. People are looking at that he is now not working because he has become employee of the quarter, or people think that he is away, nobody is telling him anything, there is no disciplinary action or anything. So again, data comes in here and data supports that it's just 30 minutes. He's anyways compensating in the evening, but he's also compensating for his prospective life. So this is how data helps us. And I think very, very important to break those perception, be it positive or be it, sometimes it would be a very positive perception, like people think it's a biasness towards Vishal, but that's not the case. It's just 30 minutes. He's anyways compensating for it. And nobody cares where are you operating from, how are you operating from, but you are doing your things. He is getting maximum scores in client relationship. So things are good. So that's how data helps. Back to you, Kavita.
Thank you so much, Gauri. In fact, what you tell me, reminds me of, of course, what you mentioned was Vishal was on a dabba date, and I mean, there's no harm in it. And probably, having the dabba date, gives him that, additional zeal to perform better, come back and be renewed and everything. And it's very important. All of us need it. I know how many times you will find people stepping out of office for a smoke, stepping out of office for a cup of masala tea from that street vendor, or just going down and doing away from your desk. That kind of detox is important. Those mini detoxes that are happening, it's very important, and we shouldn't look at it as taboo. In fact, it's a cultural thing. I feel, in organizations, culturally, some organizations are probably on the stricter side, and over a period of time, people are a little not so sure whether I can do this or not. In some organizations, you just walk out and do what you want and come back and nobody to ask you. So Devjani, I'd like to put this question across to you, that culturally, I mean, does it happen automatically, or is it that it is done deliberately, that this kind of culture will persist and this kind of culture won't persist? And all of it that we do is based on that data that is there with us, like how many people are stepping out, how many hours they are stepping out of office, is it affecting productivity? How important is that data for us?
Well, it is very important. I mean, at the end of the day, we can't deny the fact that any amount of intuitiveness, creativity, or innovation ultimately rests on a fundamental platform of rational thinking, and that has to be the backbone primarily. I'm not suggesting that it needs to be a backbone and an all and be all for a culture to actually, probably be successful at the workplace. But nevertheless, a good hybrid version of both is probably what mutually becomes, a win-win from both angles. I'd like to probably bring this discussion a little more to the contemporary world currently, what we are facing. And this was never such a big issue as it is today. When the pandemic first hit, we were all sort of caught unawares, a bit of that, because I don't think in our lifetime we had envisaged something as unexpected and of the level of scope and span that actually happened. We will be living enough to, experience something as large as that. Now, having said that, I think the HR fraternity, much against what generally people think, the HR fraternity actually rose to the challenge in a much, much more agile and nimble manner than any other fraternity. And I say that with tremendous, pride, because the kind of both structural and logical rational thinking and the kind of intuitive and creative solutions that started doing the rounds, had it not been a combination of that, I think many of large organizations would have seen the last days of their lives. Because there was a time when people's simple mental pressure was such that they were caught in that inertia of being even a think tank. They were unable to think straight. There were so many vagaries that were falling apart from all across, that what had come to become a think tank, what had come to become the rational way of working, the CXO teams or the C suites sitting together in a boardroom and hypothecating about where to take the organization forward, even something as simple as that was getting challenged because you just couldn't step out of home. So this entire thing about how our culture is built overnight and how does culture come to become such a large pillar, now that itself came under tremendous, that thinking itself came under a lot of question. Because if your culture of the place and the DNA of your organization was that physicality of your workforce was absolutely a must in order for the particular organization to be successful, suddenly, woe behold, you did not have physicality at all. Suddenly, it was all a mass of concrete and glass, but the human being, which was the mover and shaker of every organization, was actually sitting at home trying to bridge in any amount of questions of productivity and motivation from both angles. So I think it's important to look at these from a holistic perspective. Data is all around us. There's no running away from it. I think right from the time we are children, we go to school, we grow up, we attend lessons, we get into colleges, we are made to think in a cognitive manner. I think everybody tells us that look around you, pick up the signals, pick up everything that's there for you to refer back. And we are already always referring to what history told us, what geography had specified. So we have all of that around us. I think we grow up with that pattern of thinking. But I think what lends an edge, and this is corroborated, I think, by personalities also across the corporate world. If you look at people like Steve Jobs, if you look at people like Richard Branson, if you look at people like Jack Welch, they were not, it is not that they took decisions without data. They had the best analysts working for them. They had people overnight telling them 6 different insights based on 6 scenarios that could be built up based on any number of tools that they could apply. But at the end of the day, when these masters of the craft took their decisions, and I am a great admirer of Richard Branson in particular, the way his thinking thought process goes, I think much of it is lent to simple intuition, simple good feel, simple gut, where he thinks that I should put my finger on this because it sounds good. It sounds better than probably 3 different insights that are being presented to me on a PPT. I think that's something that really has held good with a lot of people. Even in India, whether you have a Rusi Modi and the way he led his communication platforms, legendary. And those were not based on analytical platforms. Those were based on intuitiveness of what he thought was going to be good for the workforce. I think there's a lot that can be taken out of culture building, which has a reference point both to how intuitively you can lead a workforce at a workplace, but at the same time, all within the overall backbone of having a rational and logical outlook, definitely based on fundamentals of data.
And that is what actually brings us to how culture in an organization gets developed based on how leadership is looking at data and how they are taking decisions based on that. Especially your example of how pandemic and how HR rose up to the occasion is very noteworthy for all of us. I mean, it was something unexpected, And all of us had to do what we had to do and roll up our sleeves and get on with it. So one of the things which I would like to ask Harini at this point is, yes, I mean, the pandemic, we started doing very different things. Are there any new frameworks that have come out on, data of employee performance? Are things being done the same way, or, the same appraisal systems, or is it something different going on now?
This is interesting. Actually, we are yet to see what the changes the pandemic has driven in terms of mindsets in organizations. But very simply looking at data and analytics as a subject, I think one of the biggest changes that has happened is people have started looking at analytics, especially HR analytics, as going up the business value chain. So at one point of time, we were talking extensively about making MIS reports, which were actually, if you go to see, they are pretty low in the business value chain because they're just reports and they are kind of information of what has happened in the past. The pandemic has led us to think about, looking at descriptive analytics, looking at causal analytics, and move towards predictive analytics. And once we have mastered the art, we've got a hang of how predictive analytics is really done, how it works. I think we're not very far away from looking at prescriptive. And once HR analytics reaches the point of even maturing in causation studies, in regression studies, and coming up with prediction and being able to recommend prescriptions to the business, I think the space it occupies in the business value chain will be phenomenal, enormously high. And that's when the dependency on analytics in general and HR analytics in particular will become very high for the business, and it transitions, or I would actually say even catapults the HR from a support function to an advisory function. To me, it looks like this is the time to actually speed up, pull up our socks, and figure out how we are going to enter that space. Instead of just reporting MISs, how do we get into mastering the art of doing a causal analytic and coming up with a prediction, if not a prescription at this stage? I think organizations are looking at it in that perspective, and I think that move has already started. Increasingly, in my association with B schools, there's a lot of focus on analytics from a perspective of improving its position in the business value chain. That's a very, very positive move that's happening. On the other hand, businesses are also looking for information ahead of time. It's like when you're hit by a disaster, a catastrophe in your personal life, you suddenly start scrambling for astrologers. Pretty much like that, organizations are looking for astrologers in terms of analysts right now. So I think it is time for this space to look at how can we get insights into the future and come up with prescriptions. That's the change that the pandemic has brought in our mindsets, to think differently.
That's, that's a very new perspective, which you have shared today. In fact, thank you so much.
Kavita, I'm sorry to butt in here,
Sure.
but I will lose this thought because it's in continuity what Harini just spoke about. I think the pandemic has, therefore, because of everything that she said right now, has actually created a journey map for a lot of the HR guys, the new age HR people who are thinking straight, who've got analytics as a weapon in their hand. Some of those have really catapulted their position as the next generation CEOs. If you go back to the research surveys currently doing the rounds, no time has been found to be as prolific and as satisfying as now for the HR guys to step into the CEO roles. Because till now, what have we been known for? We've been known for basically people champions. We sort of stand as the champion for the underdog. We become the mouthpiece for people and what they want in an organization. We become the empathy champions. All of that is good, but the fact remains, and as very rightly pointed out by Harini, where were we on the business chain? What value were we actually being seen as exhibiting, not only as the champion for people, but also as the vision taker or the forward journeyman of the management's vision? So that is where I think there's a huge difference today, that because of the natural tendency now for HR to dig deep and to go that bit further in not only just presenting an argument, And as rightly said by her, the MIS report was nothing better than just a demographic report. Okay, what is your male-female ratio? Okay, what is the longevity quotient? I mean, thank you so much, but where did it take us? I think from that, it's a 360-degree turnaround, where today, when I present my attrition figure, the first question I also need to specify is how much of that attrition number is a regrettable loss. And today, because of the analytics and the analytical bent of mind, I can present a cross-dimensional, absolute segmentation of my attrition, saying this is welcome, that is regrettable, this is where I need to put my money on, this is what my time frame is all about, so that by the turn of the industry, I know, a turn of the time period, defined time period, I know exactly what I'm going to work against. So this is the time for us. This is really the time for analytics to not only become a mainstay, but actually become just a part of the bread and butter, and not be seen as something which is an outlier. Thank you. And sorry, Gauri, I ate into your space. Next question was actually going to come to you.
Thank you so much, Devjani. In fact, the things that you spoke just now resonate, I think, with all of us in HR now, like you said, regrettable loss. And, if we were to go and ask, and if you're not prepared with that kind of information, if the CEO comes and asks you, tell me how much is regrettable loss, I mean, we need to be prepared for that kind of a scenario. Very, very important. I mean, gone are those days of, data on Excel spreadsheets, which talks about gender and things like that. So, especially what Harini spoke about prescriptive. I mean, if I'm going with some kind of analysis, let me bring solutions along with it. And let me give a prescription to remedy things. So, Gauri, what would you like to, measure, if at all you had to? I mean, what are the things that we can measure? And then, bring something meaningful out of it in terms of data.
Yeah, I think Devjani already responded to this. And thanks, Devjani, for that. That was really good. I would like to touch upon data mindset here, because rather than talking about 10 things that we can measure, I would like to create that mindset that we do it not only at work, but in personal lives also. So I'll cite a story which it happened with my friend's daughter. Her name is Renu. So when lockdown started, Renu was busy with her work and her husband also, and we were all struggling. So here, Renu's mother was busy. So Renu was mostly on mobile or tab or laptop. As we all know, it happened with kids. But her mom will tell her every day that you're spending too much time on this, but she would not agree. And she will say, school hota hai, padna hota hai, everything is on web now. What do I do? Her father will also tell her, but nobody, she's not listening to anyone. It so happens that she falls sick and she has to take homeopathy medicine. Now, if you are aware, if you go to a homeopathy doctor, they will ask you to write about everything that you do in your life and every day also. Now here's Renu writing, I wake up at 6 o'clock and then I do this and then I do that. And when she calculates it, the total number of hours that she has spent on web is around 13 and a half hours. Now this is telling itself, and now her mother and her father don't have to tell her anything. So for me, there are 3 stages for this data-driven mindset, and I would call it AID. So A would be awareness. Now she's aware that she's spending too much time on this 13 and a half hours from 24 hours. Then comes the stage of information. So now she knows where are the pockets she has to look for it. So second becomes information, and finally it is being driven by data. So she now every day looks at it, how many hours, and it so happens that after 2 weeks, she is at say 9 hours, then she goes down to 6 hours and things improve likewise. This is how we have to look at in the organization. And like Devjani said, pick up that patterns. So that we have to do in organization also. Gone are the days, Harini very well explained that MIS is not good for nothing. But there are so many matrices that we have to look from that MIS itself and present it to business to tell them. Like it once happened with me, I think most of the organizations will have at least one position jo kabhi fill up nahi ho pati. For me also, there was one such position, and the manager would always keep on shouting, you are not doing anything for me. I don't have banda. There's nobody to work for me. And what are you doing? I will not be able to achieve business target. We started analyzing data, and we told him, you have rejected 80 CVs in last 2 months. right? So it clearly indicated. And then you dive further, you get to know which manager, what were the reasons, is there any attrition happen? I mean, if you're even the offer, that also happened with me, and it was very interesting to know. We were seeing offers dropping from one particular bank, and it was to the tune of 67%. And we decided, let's not waste time with this particular bank. We will not have interviews with them. So small things, these data points, when you pick them up and when you bring them together, they give a lot of insights. So when the manager was shouting, "You're not giving me banda for work," now we are telling him, what are you looking at? You're looking for a superhuman, which is not possible. So these are the things which we can do in life, in our daily life, and then we can take it to work as well. Thank you. You're not audible.
Yeah, thank you so much, Gauri. I mean, talking about what all we can, I mean, look at in terms of perspective. Sometimes, data collection or, having data can go a little too far. We can get carried away. And today is a day where it's a information age, right? I mean, look at marketing teams, HR teams. We keep looking at information on social media. With every click is data. When we click on the screen, when we browse, some of the data is personal, some is available in the public domain. Now, I would like to ask this question to Devjani in terms of, the whole legality of it. One example I can give you is IT departments in companies monitor what employees are browsing. I mean, how are there any frameworks and what kind of policies can we bring about to actually, look at millennials in the workforce today. They believe that internet access is a fundamental right. So should we actually monitor? Is it right? Is it not right? I mean, how much in the name of security, how much can we go forward and control people?
So this is honestly, Kavita, catch 22, and a classic catch 22. Just like you talked about data security becoming a major issue today in high risk and high precision organizations. I think there was a time, it may not be a perfect analogy, but just for the sake of sort of making the point, I would like to quote the time when bonds, service bonds, used to be such a big issue in similarly IT industries. And while we knew for a fact that the legality behind a bond was always questionable, and there were n number of cases where people jumped the queue and people were not held back because there was a bond that he or she had to sign to join one of these high-end precision organizations, it still was enforced. And there are still some people in the industry, even today, who continue to argue the point about the efficiency of a bond as a moral stricture. And they would continue to argue till the cows come home. Now, my point is, in a rational commercial enterprise, which is today moving into what we are seeing as a gig economy, where even the permanency of an employment contract is under question. Because today we have what we call the digital nomads. They are great experts. They know the craft very well. They move from project to project. So it's not a question of company to company or employment to employment anymore. For them, it's a question of project to project, okay? Different landscapes to work on. They bring proficiency to work on a time-bound project, get highly paid for it, and move on. They don't look at longevity. We are not talking about long service awards anymore in organizations, are we? Because that's a misnomer today. If an employee would have stayed with you for a year, you can count your good omens. Okay, a year is a lot of time. So somebody with 6 months, somebody with 8 months, they outdo the utility of being in an organization. They start feeling bored. Now, if that is the kind of case that you have, then these old age concepts, or let's say a concept which you want to extend and stretch like a rubber band, like data security and data control, even with your own employees, I don't know how long that efficiency can be sustained under those gaps. Because today, when you get a millennial to join your organization, they rather quiz you on the kind of environment and culture you're likely to provide them, rather than you quiz them on how and what competence is he bringing to the table. It's as much relevant for that individual just about 20 years of age or 24 years of age to be satisfied about what culture am I going to get? Is the boss going to breathe down my neck, or am I going to be empowered enough to do job in my own way? Will I be tracked? Is there going to be a GPS which is going to continuously feed into a machine where I'm going to be, what time I'm going to spend? Even the question of productive time spent in an office space is under pressure today. So we're talking about a very different world of work. Whether it's the pandemic which is responsible for it or not, I don't know, because I think some of it started even much before the pandemic. The old age questions of what should be the terms of workforce management has undergone a huge change. So if you're asking about data security, social media, well, cutting down on the propensity for social media, but let's be honest, are we able to do that with our children at home? Are we really successful? Have we been able to have a perfect time in trying to control what are my children viewing 24/7 at home? I don't think there has been a prescription which has been able to tell you that. If you're not even able to do that as a parent, if you can't do that as a teacher, to what extent can you do it as an employer? I will just drop that thought as an open question, because I personally myself don't have all the answers. It's still a very open field, but something which, yes, will evolve over a period of time. Let's see what shape it takes.
Thank you so much, Debjani. In fact, this is something which all of us grapple with in terms of to what extent and whether do we want to really expend our energies on trying to figure out or micromanaging people's times or trying to figure out what they are doing with their times, and does it really help us in any way? So yes, it's an evolving situation, and it's something we learn from time to time. Thank you so much. In fact, in the interest of time, I'm going to be passing this on to Faisal for a poll which he's going to conduct right now.
Yeah. So before we move to the Q&A round, we will be running a poll to have the participants' valuable feedback on the session. During this time, we request all participants to feel free and put their questions in the chat box. So Gauri, in case you have any more questions, you can go ahead and, sorry, Kavita, you have any more questions? You can go ahead ask me the questions.
No, I mean, we had a 1-hour session, so I think I don't want to take the time of the speakers as well as the audience in the interest of time. So I think if the audience still have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them.
Yeah, I kept it open for the audience to just ask
While the audience comes up with questions, I just like Debjani pulled a thread of thought as I was speaking. I would like to do similarly with her thought as well. So she spoke a lot about data and in the context of security and all of that. The only thought I want to leave with everyone with is that it's very difficult for anybody to really control data and information in any case. But I think the point is, if we are mindful of what kind of data footprints we are leaving, then it becomes a lot more easier. You don't need any control. So no one can really control what anybody is watching or what anybody is doing with systems and information they have at hand. But every single user, if you start getting mindful on what is it that you're doing with the information, because every time you click a button, you enter into a particular website or you enter into a URL, you're leaving data footprints, and all of that is getting captured somewhere. So I think if we are aware of that and we are mindful about how we are exploring data and what kind of information we are gathering, I think that leaves us with thinking about do we really need any control?
Yeah,
Very
thank you,
well
Harini.
said, Harini.
Yeah, very well said. So we are getting positive feedbacks also in the chat box from Sahil, Nair, Sai Pallavi. So thank you, Ms. Kavita, for taking us through this wonderful session about importance of data and its impact in the modern world. Thank you, Ms. Debjani, Ms. Harini, Ms. Gauri, for sharing your valuable thoughts and insights with us. It has been a privilege having you all for this engrossing session. To all those who wish to learn and grow, you can access the recording of our today's session on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. Before we conclude with today's session, we would also want to thank all the associations, Gesia, NASCOM, COE, Gliptalk, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local Ahmedabad and India for supporting HRAI's event. To know more about this session, as association request you all to kindly visit the links provided in the chat window. Request you, see you soon, stay safe, take care and bye for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Faisal.
Bye, everyone. And thanks, HRA.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.